Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to our little corner of peace and wisdom. I hope you're settling in comfortably, maybe with a warm cup of tea, or perhaps you're taking a gentle walk while listening to this. Wherever you are, just know that this moment, right now, is perfect. There's an ancient saying that goes, "Speech is silver, but silence is golden." And today I want to share with you one of the most profound teachings that the Buddha ever offered us about the incredible power of knowing when to speak and when to simply be quiet. It's a teaching that can transform not just how we communicate, but how we live, how we love, and how we find that deep inner peace we're all searching for. I was reflecting on this just yesterday as I watched a farmer tending to his garden. He worked in complete silence, with such gentle care, moving from plant to plant with this beautiful, meditative rhythm. No words, no announcements about what he was doing, just pure, mindful action. And you know what? His garden was absolutely flourishing. The plants seemed to respond to his quiet presence in the most magical way. This made me think about how often we fill our days with so many words, so much noise, so much talking about what we're going to do, what we should do, what we might do. But the Buddha, in his infinite wisdom, taught us something quite different. He showed us that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to speak less and act more mindfully. To let our actions, our presence, our very being do the talking for us. So today, we're going to explore this beautiful teaching together. We'll discover the Buddha's guidance on right speech, we'll learn about the healing power of what he called noble silence, and we'll see how mindful action can transform both ourselves and everyone around us in the most wonderful ways. This is going to be a gentle journey, so just relax, breathe deeply, and let these ancient wisdoms wash over you like a soft, warm breeze. Now let's take a gentle step into the heart of Buddhist wisdom. When the Buddha first shared his teachings 2,500 years ago, he gave us this beautiful roadmap called the Noble Eightfold Path. Think of it as 8 stepping stones across a peaceful river, each one helping us move from suffering to freedom, from confusion to clarity. And right there, nestled among these 8 precious gifts, is something called right speech. Now, isn't it fascinating that out of all the things the Buddha could have focused on, he chose to include how we use our words as one of the fundamental practices for awakening? This tells us something profound about the power our speech holds. You see, in Buddhism, we understand that speech isn't separate from our spiritual journey. It's not just something we do with our mouths while our hearts and minds are somewhere else. No, our speech is intimately connected to what we call sila, which means ethical conduct. Every word we speak is like a pebble dropped into the still pond of existence, creating ripples that spread far beyond what we can see. The Buddha, in his gentle wisdom, showed us that there are 4 beautiful ways to practice right speech, and each one is like a doorway to greater peace and understanding. First, there's the practice of speaking truthfully. Now, this doesn't mean being brutally honest in a way that hurts people. It means speaking from a place of authenticity, sharing what is real and genuine in your heart. When we speak truthfully, we create trust, and trust is like sunlight for relationships. Everything grows better in its warmth. The second aspect is avoiding divisive speech. You know how some words can build bridges while others tear them down? The Buddha taught us to be bridge builders with our words. This means not gossiping, not saying things that separate people from each other, not creating drama where there could be harmony. Instead, we use our words to bring people together, to heal old wounds, to create understanding where there was once conflict. Then there's the practice of speaking kindly. Oh, this one touches my heart so deeply. Harsh words are like arrows. Once they're released, we can't take them back, and they can wound in ways that last for years. But kind words, gentle words, they're like healing balm. They can lift someone's spirit, give them hope, remind them that they're loved and valued. Even when we need to say something difficult, we can wrap it in kindness. And finally, there's the wisdom of purposeful speech. The Buddha called meaningless chatter one of the obstacles to inner peace. Now, this doesn't mean we can't have fun conversations or share a laugh with friends. It means being mindful about when our words serve a purpose and when they're just noise filling the silence, because we're uncomfortable with quiet. I sometimes think about words as having their own karma. Every word we speak creates an energy that goes out into the world and eventually comes back to us. Harsh words return as harshness. Kind words return as kindness. True words return as trust. And when we speak without thinking, When we let our tongues run wild like untrained horses, we often find ourselves dealing with the consequences of that carelessness later on. This is why the Buddha saw speech as a form of action. In Buddhism, we don't just think about what we do with our bodies as action. Our words are actions too. They shape reality. They influence hearts. They can heal or harm. They can open doors or close them forever. Understanding this gives us a kind of superpower. The power to choose consciously how we want to influence the world around us with every single word we speak. Now let's explore something truly magical that the Buddha discovered during his journey to awakening. There were times when people would come to him with questions, sometimes trying to trap him, sometimes genuinely seeking wisdom, and sometimes just wanting to stir up controversy. And you know what the Buddha would do? Sometimes he would answer with the most profound teachings, but other times he would simply remain silent. This wasn't because he didn't know the answer, or because he was being rude. No, this was what he called noble silence, a conscious choice to not speak, because silence itself was the most compassionate response. Imagine having such wisdom that you know exactly when words would help, and when they would only create more confusion or suffering. I love this story about the Buddha. Once, a man came to him absolutely furious, shouting accusations and insults. The Buddha just sat there peacefully, listening with complete calm. When the man finally exhausted himself, the Buddha asked gently, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, confused, said, "To the one who offered it, I suppose." The Buddha smiled and said, "I do not accept your anger, so it remains with you." Then he sat in beautiful silence while the man contemplated this wisdom. This brings me to one of my favorite Buddhist teachings, the story of the two arrows. The Buddha taught that when we experience pain or difficulty, it's like being struck by the first arrow. This first arrow is often unavoidable. It's the natural suffering that comes with being human. Someone says something hurtful, we lose something precious, we face disappointment. That's the first arrow, and it's part of life. But then, so often, we create a second arrow with our reactions. We replay the hurtful words over and over in our minds. We tell everyone about our disappointment. We fill the air with complaints and worries and endless talking about our problems. This second arrow, this is the suffering we create for ourselves through our own mental chatter and excessive talking. The beautiful thing about noble silence is that it prevents that second arrow from ever being shot. When we can sit quietly with our pain, when we can resist the urge to immediately fill the air with our reactions, we give ourselves space for healing. We give wisdom a chance to arise naturally, like a flower opening in the morning sun. In meditation, we practice this kind of healing silence all the time. When we sit quietly, breathing gently, we're not trying to stop our thoughts or emotions. We're simply learning to be present with whatever arises without immediately needing to comment on it, analyze it, or explain it to someone else. This is such a powerful practice because it teaches us that we don't need to have an opinion about everything, we don't need to verbalize every feeling, and we don't need to fill every quiet moment with noise. You know, I've noticed something beautiful about people who practice this kind of mindful silence. They become incredible listeners. When they do speak, their words carry weight and wisdom. They've learned to create space for others to express themselves without immediately jumping in with their own stories or advice. They understand that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is our complete, silent presence. There's this lovely concept in Buddhism about listening deeply to understand suffering, not listening to respond, not listening to judge, not listening to fix, just listening to truly understand. This kind of listening is actually a form of meditation. When we listen this deeply, we create a sacred space where healing can happen naturally. And here's something wonderful that happens when we embrace noble silence. We start to notice the incredible richness of the present moment. Instead of constantly narrating our experience, we begin to actually live it. We notice the way sunlight filters through the trees, the gentle rhythm of our breathing, the feeling of our feet on the ground. We become present to life in a way that's impossible when we're always talking, always explaining, always filling the silence with words. The Buddha taught that in this spacious silence, wisdom naturally arises. Not the kind of wisdom that comes from books or from other people's opinions, but the deep, intuitive wisdom that emerges from our own direct experience of life. This is the wisdom that guides us to know exactly what to say and when to say it, and perhaps even more importantly, when to simply remain beautifully, compassionately silent. There's this beautiful story from the Buddhist tradition that always makes me smile. It's about two monks who were walking together when they came across an old woman struggling to cross a muddy river. Now, the first monk immediately began talking about how they should help, discussing the best approach, explaining the proper techniques for assisting someone safely across water, and going on and on about the virtues of compassion and service. Meanwhile, the second monk simply walked over to the old woman, gently helped her onto his back, carried her across the river, set her down safely on the other side, bowed respectfully, and returned to his companion. Not a single word about what he was doing or why. He just saw someone who needed help and helped her. Hours later, as they continued their journey, the first monk was still talking about compassion, still discussing the theoretical aspects of helping others, still explaining all the wonderful things they could do to serve. Finally, the second monk turned to him with the gentlest smile and said, "My friend, I put the old woman down at the river. You're still carrying her in your words." This story touches something so deep in my heart, because it shows us the difference between talking about goodness and actually embodying it. The Buddha taught us something profound. Don't just be good, do good. And there's such freedom in this teaching because it means we don't have to announce our intentions. We don't have to explain our motivations. We don't have to convince anyone of our sincerity. We can simply act from love and let our actions speak the language of the heart. In Buddhism, we have this beautiful practice called dana, which means generous giving. Now, true dana isn't about making a big show of our generosity. It's not about letting everyone know how much we've donated or how many people we've helped. True dana is like the sun giving light. It just gives naturally, effortlessly, without any need for recognition or praise. I remember hearing about a man who would quietly leave food for homeless people in his neighborhood. He never told anyone about it, never posted about it on social media, never even mentioned it to his closest friends. He would just prepare extra meals and leave them in places where he knew they would be found and appreciated. Years later, people in his community discovered what he had been doing, and they were amazed. Here was someone who had been teaching them about compassion every single day through his actions, and they never even knew it. This is the kind of teaching the Buddha did throughout his life. Yes, he gave magnificent talks and shared profound wisdom through words, but more often he taught through demonstration. When people saw him sitting in peaceful meditation, they wanted to learn meditation. When they witnessed his kindness to all beings, they were inspired to be kind. When they observed how he lived with such simplicity and contentment, they began to question their own attachments to material things. The Buddha understood something beautiful about human nature. We learn much more from what we see than from what we hear. A single act of genuine kindness can touch someone's heart in a way that 1,000 words about kindness never could. A moment of authentic peace can inspire someone to seek that peace for themselves more powerfully than any lecture about the benefits of meditation. This brings us to what the Buddha called the middle path, that beautiful balance between extremes. And this applies to our speech and action too. It's not that we should never speak about our values or our aspirations. There are times when speaking up is absolutely necessary, when we witness injustice, when someone needs encouragement, when our words can genuinely help or heal. The wisdom lies in learning skillful means, knowing when our words will serve and when they might create more confusion. Sometimes, the most skillful thing we can do is to speak boldly for truth and justice. Other times, the most skillful response is gentle silence and compassionate action. I love thinking about this as creating positive karma through what we do, rather than just through what we say. Every time we help without announcing it, every time we show kindness without expecting recognition, every time we make someone's day a little brighter just because we can, we're creating ripples of goodness that spread far beyond what we can imagine. And here's something magical that happens when we start living this way. We discover that actions have their own voice. They speak directly to people's hearts. They communicate on a level that goes deeper than words, touching something universal in the human experience. When someone experiences genuine kindness, they don't need it explained to them. They feel it, they know it, and often they're inspired to pass it on to others. This is how we can truly change the world, not through grand announcements or elaborate speeches about what we're going to do, but through simple, consistent, loving actions that demonstrate what we believe in. One small act of kindness at a time, one moment of mindful presence at a time, one gesture of genuine care at a time. Now, my dear friends, Let's bring all of this beautiful wisdom right into our everyday lives. Because that's where the real magic happens, isn't it? Not in some distant monastery or during perfect meditation retreats, but right here, in our messy, wonderful, ordinary moments. I want to share with you a simple practice that has transformed so many lives. It's what I like to call the sacred pause. Before you speak, just take a gentle breath and ask yourself 3 questions. Is what I'm about to say true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? These 3 little questions are like guardians at the gate of your heart, making sure that only words of wisdom and love pass through. You don't have to be perfect with this. I certainly wasn't when I first started practicing it. Sometimes I would remember the questions halfway through saying something unkind, and I'd have to pause and apologize. But that's okay. That's all part of the beautiful, imperfect journey of growing in wisdom. And here's something wonderful you can try. Start each day with just 5 minutes of silent sitting. You don't need any special cushions or apps or techniques. Just sit comfortably, close your eyes, and breathe naturally. Let your thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky. Don't try to stop them or judge them. Just practice being present with whatever arises without immediately needing to comment on it or fix it or understand it. This simple practice teaches us something profound about the space between stimulus and response. Instead of immediately reacting to whatever happens in our day, we learn to pause, to breathe, to choose our response consciously. It's like developing a muscle of mindfulness that gets stronger each time we use it. But perhaps the most transformative practice is learning to listen with your whole heart. Real listening is becoming such a rare gift in our world. Most of us are so busy preparing what we're going to say next that we miss the miracle of truly hearing another person. Try this. When someone is speaking to you, resist the urge to jump in with your own story or advice. Just listen. Be completely present with their words, their emotions, their experience. You'll be amazed at how this simple act of presence can heal and transform relationships. I've seen this work magic in families. Parents who learn to listen to their children without immediately offering solutions or corrections discover that their kids start opening up in ways they never expected. Couples who practice mindful listening find that old conflicts dissolve and new understanding emerges. It's like we're giving each other the gift of being truly seen and heard. And you know what happens when we start living this way? When we speak less and listen more. When we let our actions express our values. When we choose kindness over being right, we become like magnets for peace and joy. People are drawn to our calm presence. They feel safe around us. They know they can trust us with their hearts because we've learned the sacred art of holding space for others. Trust grows in this beautiful soil of mindful communication. When people know that you speak truthfully, that you listen deeply, that your actions align with your words, they naturally open to you. Relationships become more authentic, more nourishing, more real. And here's something lovely. As we practice these teachings, we start to create little ripples of peace in our communities. Maybe it's the way we respond to conflict at work with calm presence instead of reactive words. Maybe it's how we choose to help a neighbor without making a big announcement about it. Maybe it's simply the way we model contentment and joy in our daily lives. These small acts of mindfulness might seem insignificant, but they're actually seeds of transformation. Every time we choose silence over harmful speech, every time we listen with compassion, every time we let our actions speak for our hearts, we're contributing to a more peaceful world. We're living proof that another way is possible. And so, beautiful souls, we come to the end of our gentle journey together. Just like that farmer I mentioned at the beginning, who learned to let his harvest speak for itself, we too can discover the profound power of mindful speech and silent action. We can learn to trust that our authentic presence, our kind actions, and our compassionate hearts communicate more eloquently than any words ever could. This week, I invite you to try something simple yet transformative. Practice the sacred pause before speaking. Let at least one action each day express your values without any need for words or recognition. Maybe it's helping someone quietly. Maybe it's listening with your whole heart. Maybe it's simply being present with someone who needs comfort. And as we part ways, I offer you this traditional Buddhist blessing. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. And may your life be a gentle teaching of love and wisdom for all beings you encounter. Until we meet again in this space of peace, carry these teachings lightly in your heart, and remember that sometimes the most profound things we can say are spoken in the beautiful language of silence. Thank you for sharing this time with me. Rest well, dear friends.